Why your love relationship is fake. We often think of our partners as an identical reflection of ourselves. We love to believe that the person we choose to love is an extension of our own identity that mirrors most, if not all, the similarities. Driven by a sense of security, we project our ideals, aims, beliefs, and values into the other person, creating a version of another human being that we share time and space with. Through this biased reflection, we no longer share a genuine connection to the real person. We merely see a fantasy figure of who we think they are, rather than they actually are. That's why couples argue, fight, and sometimes abuse each other without resolving the problems they conflict about. They become consumed by frustrations and disappointments of each other once their fantasies are shattered by their exposed differences, ending up with a heartbreaking separation or worse, an abusive relationship. When individuals are trapped in certain roles that didn't fit them in the first place and they play them along to serve their emotional safety, a sacrifice of the genuine self is offered for the benefit of the couple. To preserve the myth of the dyad identity, we withhold the genuine interior. We shift our thoughts, modify our values, and play along to serve the narrative we created with our partner. That in itself, a process similar to what we find in the ego development of the infant. Psychoanalysis godfather Sigmund Freud believed that the infant is born egoless, a sack of flesh that survives upon the need of others. And to meet his needs, the infant grows to identify with others in a psychological dynamic of what Melanie Klein mentioned object relation. The child learns to be identified with his caregiver, constructing his first worldviews based on his relationship with his parents. The infant not only needs the caregiver, but he sees himself in the attached person. Some psychoanalysts, such as Rennie Speeds, Margaret Mahler, argued that the infant survivor relies on his identification with his caregiver. He sees himself and explores the world through the caregiver's emotional response. And most importantly, this relational experience determines how the infant develops his sense of self. If his needs are neglected and his emotions are disregarded by the caregiver, a fragile sense of oneself is established deeply into the psyche. Following the same psychodynamics in our adult life, we often seek love to find attachment and connection. But somewhere in the process, we give up our genuine selves. We mold our opinions to meet theirs. We say things we think they might like. Bit by bit, we find ourselves peeling the layers of our identity for an ideal that we think will provide us security and acceptance. Think about how many times you acted in a certain way that didn't reflect who you are, or said something you thought the other will be interested in, or you tried changing your style, habits, and shape to get the intimate life you desire so badly. We think it's okay to give up on our genuine soul for the emotional security, missing the point of true intimacy and connection, which is being out there in the open with your partner, showing your most vulnerable side, exposing yourself for who you are, instead of wearing an altered persona. The problem with thirsting for love isn't just we mold ourselves to others' viewpoints, but also demanding our partner to follow in the play, to mold themselves into our ideal, forcing them to change for us, and making demands that don't fit their true identity, asking them a similar narcissistic offer to what others made for us. Be like I want you to be, so you can have me. Repeating a script we're programmed for. Thinking that love is a staged play. Give up who you are, force your lover to do the same, drain your souls together so you can be with each other. Claiming emotional security as our higher aims, just like a newborn clinging to its first caretaker. We walk into relationships blindly, asking for everything except honesty. When we are emotionally attached to an ideal of the self, the other, and a relationship, we are building a dyad identity over an image rather than a reality. A childish fantasy about a paradise of comfort, where everything is good and in its perfect place, and there is no room for differentiation and conflict. In fake relationships, love is a facade to discomfort, where two people agree unconsciously to bargain their genuine selves for the short-lived sense of security. Because discomfort is a traumatic experience for those who are not looking for what's real, but for what's easy. When the facade collapses in the face of real-life challenges, trivial conflicts arise as the center problematics of the relationship. The dyad will argue over who's doing the dishes and who's taking the garbage out. They will scream over each other for why the other isn't doing what he's supposed to do, and why no one is listening to the other. But these problems are far from being essential, because the crucial problem is much deeper. When the dyad builds the relationship on a lie, not just their connection is artificial, but also their growing problems. They will fight over everything except their real problem. The couple who were not honest and exposed to each other from the very beginning, they will be obliged to preserve the lies instead of nurturing a connection. Serving the faulty identity of this is us and this is not us. This is why some couples are stuck in a toxic realm that seems evasive. They gave up so much on themselves to save a perfect fantasy. And when this illusory image of the dyad is tested and broken, the couple is burdened with a duty they both paid. Weighing the risks of being in a faulty love relationship, you should ask yourself if it is worth it to put on a mask. Play a role that isn't you for a fabricated sense of emotional attachment that is often pathological and short-lived. Or simply exposing yourself for who you are and getting the love you deserve. Certainly, being yourself doesn't mean or justify being a dick. It means to claim your opinions, share your values, and show up as someone who isn't disgusted by who they are. Failing to do so signals to other people that you are desperate for attention and intimacy, placing you in a position of someone needy and hypocritical, just like a man who will say anything to his date to get him into her pants, playing an imposter game and teaching people that the only interesting thing about you is a lie. The healthier alternative to this is realizing that being vulnerable and honest is a win-win situation. If they like you, they will stay for who you are. If they don't, they were not meant to be with you in the first place, and that's fine. The problem with this is that it's not easy as it sounds, as long as there are people who weren't cherished to be themselves, who were taught since a very young age by their caregivers that being themselves is a trouble. Every time they showed the need, they were met with neglect or abuse, punishing their true identity and ability of expression to shy back into the dark. As they grow up, they learn how to hide their vulnerability. To them, every expressed need is a sign of weakness, so they blend themselves with the crowd, wear whatever mask they find useful, and get the thing they want. Short-lived connection for a faulty personality. One useful example here is the red pillars males, who embrace a certain approach for dating and mating. Their idea for intimacy is based on very basic principles. 1. Women are made in a certain biological makeup, so they are attracted to men who act in a certain way. 2. To get as many women you have to act in a specific way. This might be oversimplified, but the point is that people who embrace such thoughts tend to seek relationships with women by sacrificing what makes intimacy worth it, which is authenticity. They memorize pickup lines, buff their chests up, and do everything except being themselves. This frame of mind may get them a one-night stand, but it is a problematic for long-term relationships, where real intimacy is found. That's why such individuals often experience relationships with outrage, disappointment, and probably abuse. With the rise of such cultures, there is an essential need for people to be more vulnerable, to show kindness, love, and care at its truest form. Otherwise, we are growing a generation of emotional freaks who abuse themselves and others for a faulty sense of love, teaching them to explore the world with bitterness and emotional insincerity. And for that, I would let you imagine what a miserable world that would be.